orchestra. Robert Boudreau, normally we had 2.5 to 3 hour rehearsals in the morning and then in the afternoon. And then sometimes we'd have a 2-hour concert that night. For brass players, you know, our chops, our face, our embouchure on the floor, you know, and somehow we survived. But near the, we were in the afternoon rehearsal, I think we had just concluded. Robert said, you know, Ivana's coming, Ivana Ludova. And Ivana Ludova had written a piece for Steve Schick, who was in that competition that I was in, marvelous drummer, and the piece was just amazing. And she died rather recently. She was a very well-known international reputation, composer at the Czech Republic Prague Conservatory, right? And so I had met Ivana, very gracious lady, and so Robert said, I have to travel. I have to travel somewhere, I forget where it was. And so, you know, I want you and the pianist to have a look at this piece she wrote. And it was a piece that she wrote for an international competition in Prague. And I said, okay, we'll look at it. Didn't know when Robert was coming back, that's all he told me. So I had a rehearsal with the pianist, and this piece was like about the hardest thing that I'd ever just, you know, immediately read, you know, and Robert wasn't there to disarm it as usual. And as far as he says usual of disarming pieces that were difficult, he just absolutely disarmed them for all of us. And so we rehearsed and gave it a good shot, and it's like, man, there's no way, whatever. So he came back a few days from wherever he was, presumably he'd visit Pittsburgh. And after one of the rehearsals, he said, morning rehearsal, he said, so how's the piece coming? I said, Rob, we looked at it, we worked with it, and there's no way that we're going to be able to play this in 2 or 3 weeks. He said, 2 or 3 weeks? Yvonne is coming tomorrow. You're on tomorrow night. I don't think I moved after he said that, you know. And so, oh my gosh, so we tried to rehearse it and everything. Then the next day, when Yvonne came, he dispatched Ivana, go work with them, you know, and do this thing. And she's shaking her head, and I'm shaking my head, and the pianist's shaking her head. It's just like whatever. So we walk back in Robert's office, and Robert says, and Ivana says, there's just no way, there's just no way this can happen. And Robert stuck to his guns, as he's apt to do, and basically said, no, you're on tonight, you know, be able to do it. Oh. So I went back and worked a little bit more. Okay, we were in Mobile, Alabama. I don't know why I have so many things that remember in my mind about different things that happened in Mobile, Alabama. I'm not talking about the ironclad vessels of the Civil War. He replied to Ivana probably in the same way I imagine he spoke to the Jamaican Prime Minister when they were doing the Caribbean tour, because the Jamaican Prime Minister, as I understood it, wasn't willing to invite the Wind Symphony there. But after Robert got talking with him, the Prime Minister asked Robert, would you please bring the American Wind Symphony to Jamaica? And it was a wonderful visit there for sure. Oh my gosh. Okay, I continue to rehearse. Sorry that I'm reading right now, it's faster that way. Get dressed in performance, got dressed in performance attire, and arrived at this very old movie theater that had been turned into a facsimile, not really, into a community theater. When I arrived at the front room where the concert was to take place, it was beautiful, that was modern. I noticed there was no piano. I had been wrong before thinking that I was the angriest I'd been. Now I was definitely angrier than I was before. And I definitely moved the bar forward than previously thought about that anger as I made an absolute beeline towards Robert. At this point, I'm sure Robert completely realized the predicament he was in, along with the uncertainty of his future. And he said, listen, hang on. That's the only time I ever saw him like that. Normally he was telling him, and as in requesting a stay of execution. He made great headway away from me. Entering the main stage of the community theater, he asked if we could make use of the piano and bring in the audience for this one piece, delaying the community talent show rehearsal that was previously been in process. They agreed. So on stage right, there was an incredibly terrible beat-up thing. I can't actually call it a piano because it was not, right? The audience moved into the seats directly on from the audience viewpoint on the left side of the audience, directly in front of me, and proceeded to play the piece. Strategically placed directly above me was a mirror disco ball. That was twirling. I want you to understand the setting that this was. It was twirling. I dug deep as we started to perform the piece. I learned something, that if you're in an absolute rage, it actually does give you strength and energy to perform the impossible. As in similar documented reports of human beings actually outrunning large cats in the wild. While we performed, a stage crew workman crossed the stage directly in front of me, carrying some of the original cell phones that was about 1.5 feet long. And he was talking on that phone. A little girl pranced out in front of me in a red sequin dress looking like Shirley Temple and taps. And she went, and then she ran off stage. Definitely surprised to be exactly in front of my trombone bell.
Oh my
At the
God.
conclusion of the piece, the audience exited the auditorium wondering what just happened. Ivana came up and spoke to me. She was very pleased with the performance, looking terminally perplexed. She managed to utter me, I don't know how you did that. The next person, Tanya Boudreau, put the bow upon the entire event by stating with dazed and very confused eyes, "That's the most surrealistic thing I've ever seen." The Wind Symphony Band, always a circus. When I came, I was a little older than some of the other people, the musicians at the time, and so Robert would say, would you care to drive the van? And he said, I'd like to have, the more mature people. I'm looking around, you can't be talking about me, And so I would drive the van. That way I could go to Sled 11 every once in a while. I took my host family, Mary Moses, to a drive-in theater and her 2 boys in the brown and tan van. But a lot of this story has to do, most of it probably to the orange van. Because one time on a different tour when I came back, Robert, there's something stupid had happened with the van driver or whatever. I don't know what happened. So he's making the rounds talking to all the van drivers, right? And so he's giving me the 8 points of the speech, I've heard those before. And while he's talking about being careful with the van, right, the orange van is careening across the intersection, directly juxtaposed about 8 blocks behind it. I have never gotten over that juxtaposition. Oh my God, it was absolutely incredible. So, one day I got to the ship, walked on the gangplank, and Robert came out from the office, and he's got something on his arm that's wrapped in a sheet. He says, come on, we're going to have a better at sea. Right? So I got the other side of the boat, and there's a plastic bust of Elvis Presley that someone probably had put in the art gallery below. Right? So he threw it in, and Elvis went bobbing down the Tennessee River. This stuck in my mind for a later time. As we were in North Tonawanda above Buffalo, and near Niagara Falls area, and they had a bunch of souvenirs, and some of them were really cheap. And they had a statue of a cowboy, Porky the Pig, that was the cheesiest looking thing I had ever seen in my life, right? In a cowboy hat, and I thought, perfect, I've got Robert this time, right? So I snuck down there right before the Patriots concert. And I only learned when we were playing in the Patriots concert, he had escaped, and I think went to Pittsburgh again, and you were running the show, and I was like, I'm not aiming for Kathleen, and everything. Oh, so you were, Kathleen, you were giving the tour, and the woman that grew into the tree sculpture, right? Porky the Pig with 6 shooters looked perfect next to it. So I'm hiding behind the Becker and looking at everything, and you're telling about the statue, and then you go, oh, I see one of our musicians is having some fun. This is probably, and I think you named me right then, to be able to do that. But Robert dodged the bullet on that particular case. Robert invested in so many people, has been said, and I want to put another asterisk on it, and none more than in me. What he gave, what he taught. One example is when I taught a high school band after I'd done different seasons with the Wind Symphony. I asked him if he might consider coming down. I was in high school for a high school band outside of Washington, D.C. in Falls Church, Virginia, where I'm from. And asked him if he would conduct the all-region band. And he most graciously came. And he was absolutely marvelous with those kids. And I remember going to dinner with a lot of the directors and the teachers in the area, and he was holding court, and it was just in great form. He was so very gracious. Thank you for letting me speak. God bless you all. And I not only love Robert, I love the Boudreau family. I grew up as a young adult with you.